The Earth is sending distress signals. Wildfires, droughts, and melting glaciers. Can we reverse the damage? Explore the harrowing effects of climate change. It's a wake-up call. Global emergency. Climate Tracker on WION World is One.
Namaste. Hello friends. We did Dr. Subhash Chandra show, popularly known as DSC show, for 4 years from August 2014 to August 2018. 28 states of Bharat. Of course, we reached out to all of you in 190 countries across the world. The show was very successful. Each episode was being watched by almost 25 million people every week. For past 6 years, the demand of the show has never died down. People write to us, people ask for the show to restart again. Hence, we are beginning the show once again on All Z Network, also on WION, which is the global network channel from India. Again, thank you for your love and affection. See you soon at Subhash Chandra Show.
To bring the benefits of the Subhash Chandra Show to your educational institution, teachers and students, send an invitation to Juhi Jha at yoursarthi@such.org.in.
This week on Tech It Out, we show you a new range of Samsung devices. We introduce you to a Dyson product that aims to take care of your hair. And we tell you about a scam that can be personally and financially devastating. This and more on WION World is One at these times.
Welcome back. You're watching WION World is One, and this is World DNA. Let's start with the headlines first. U.S. President Joe Biden seeks to reassure voters and Democrats that he is in good shape as he returns campaign trail amid mounting pressure from Democrats to step aside. Meta to lift restrictions on former U.S. President Donald Trump's Facebook and Instagram accounts ahead of the first Republican convention. Accounts were suspended after he praised those who stormed U.S. Capitol in 2021. New Mexico judge dismisses manslaughter charges against Alec Baldwin after prosecutors failed to turn over a batch of bullets that killed Rust cinematographer Helena Hutchins in 2021. Days after U.S. raised concerns over Indian Prime Minister's meeting with Russian President, National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan speaks to his Indian counterpart Ajit Doval, discusses bilateral, regional and international issues. Palestinian militant group Hamas insists on written guarantees from mediators in ongoing ceasefire talks that Israel will not resume war after first group of Israeli hostages held in Gaza are released. SpaceX workhorse Falcon 9 rocket grounded by U.S. Federal Aviation Administration after rare failure. The uncrewed rocket was carrying 20 of Starlink internet satellites. Novak Djokovic sets up a blockbuster rematch with defending champion Carlos Alcaraz for the Wimbledon men's single title. Djokovic ends Lorenzo Mussetti's run in the semi-final, while Alcaraz rallies past fifth seed Daniil Medvedev. Now, top story at the hour. Amid mounting pressure to drop out of the U.S. presidential race, Joe Biden hit the campaign trail in Michigan and continued his relentless sprint to persuade lawmakers, donors, and voters that he's in good shape. The 81-year-old made a surprise stop at garage-themed restaurant in a western suburb of Detroit and acknowledged speculation surrounding his candidacy. But he joked that he is just 41 and that there is a lot more to do.
For the longest time, I was too young, because I was the second youngest man ever elected to the United States Senate. And anyway, now I'm too old. But I know, hopefully with a little bit of age comes a little bit of wisdom. And I hopefully that in this moment, I think the alternative is not much of an alternative.
Biden's first solo press conference a day ago witnessed the president present a detailed picture of his policies, but the verbal flubs referring to Vice President Kamala Harris as Vice President Trump and Ukraine Zelensky as President Putin gave the skeptics an incentive to pressure him into dropping out of the race. As a first response after the conference, several major donors informed the Biden campaign that they will be withholding around $90 million of promised funds if Biden gets the ticket. According to reports, the frozen amounts included multiple eight-figure commitments. The list of business leaders calling for President Biden to step aside has grown since the debate debacle. The latest addition is Richard Branson, the founder of the Virgin Group. In a blog post, Branson heaped praises on the president for his accomplishments while in the White House, but underscored that now is the time that he should consider what's at stake and step aside from the run. However, analysts believe that Biden was fluid and did extremely well at the recently concluded NATO summit, and that every flub was being magnified tenfold.
In this session, we will address...
Presidents make gaffes all the time. They say things that they don't mean to say. But because of Biden's debate performance and these growing and then what the polls show about him losing to Trump and growing doubts among leading Democrats that he can win and defeat Trump, every flub is magnified tenfold.
Biden, the oldest person ever to serve as the U.S. president, has had a series of verbal slip-ups lately. In an interview with Philadelphia's radio station about a week ago, Biden mistakenly referred himself as the first black woman to serve with a black president. He had momentarily confused himself with Vice President Kamala Harris while reflecting on his time as vice president under former President Barack Obama. Amid the ongoing Israel-Hamas truce talks, the militant group has demanded written guarantees that Israel will not launch an attack on Gaza after the release of hostages. This comes as the two sides have agreed on a general framework for the deal, with only one point of friction. Hamas has demanded a permanent ceasefire, while Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says the assault will not end until the final objective of the war is achieved, which is total victory. Listen in.
Netanyahu declares that he rejects any agreement that leads to a permanent ceasefire and says that he wants an agreement that does not permanently ceasefire. He wants to release his prisoners and then resume his aggression against our people. This is Netanyahu's strategy.
Israel has also refuted claims that the IDF will pull out from the Gaza-Egypt border as part of the ceasefire deal. In fact, Prime Minister Netanyahu has said that the Israeli forces will continue to hold the border to avoid weapons and armor from reaching Hamas militants through the crossings. However, the Israeli Prime Minister did not mention whether this measure will be a temporary one. This comes as the International Court of Justice is set to deliver a verdict on Israel's quote-unquote occupation of Palestinian territories on the 19th of July. A record-breaking number of 52 countries presented their case against the ramifications of Israeli actions in the Gaza Strip. The ruling can add political pressure onto the Netanyahu government to stop the war in Gaza. Meanwhile, Israel has continued to push into the Gaza Strip. The IDF claims to have killed the deputy chief of Hamas's Shajaya battalion on Friday after troops raided an UNRWA facility. The commander, named Ayman Shweda, was killed as part of recent Israeli airstrikes in the Gaza city. Ubda Abu Khain, another company commander with Shweda, was also killed. As per the IDF, Shweda was involved in the planning of the October 7 attacks. Also on Friday, as part of the same operations, the IDF released a video claiming to find drones and weapons inside a quote-unquote Hamas combat complex inside the former UNRWA headquarters. Meanwhile, demonstrators rallied in Jordan's capital of Amman to show support and solidarity with the Palestinians. The protests broke out after the IDF pulled back from Gazan territories after a week-long operation which killed dozens of people and destroyed several homes. The problems for Gazans are far from over. The United Nations agency is struggling to meet the aid requirements in the Gaza Strip, emphasizing on the importance of the group. UN Chief Antonio Guterres has urged global funding for UNRWA. The UN agency demanded an aid package of $1.2 billion for Gaza this year. By now, only less than 20% of the funds have been collected.
Without the necessary support and financing to UNRWA, Palestine refugees will lose a critical lifeline and the last ray of hope for a better future. To those of you who have already pledged support, I thank you. And my appeal to everyone is this: protect UNRWA, protect UNRWA's staff, and protect UNRWA's mandate, including through funding.
Moving on, Russia has said that it is not planning to attack NATO and it was the alliance that was aggravating tensions. Foreign Ministry spokesperson Maria Zakharova was referring to a NATO summit declaration that said Russia remains the most significant and direct threat to allies' security. This is what she said. Listen in.
The second point that I would like to draw your attention to is that the final declaration that was adopted at the NATO summit in Washington, which was held from July 9th to 11th, Russia was once again called a threat to the group, a direct quote in all operating environments for long-term perspective. This is not so. Russia is not preparing to attack NATO. The North Atlantic Alliance is following the path of escalating tensions constantly. They're pushing, they're endlessly mentioning Russia and its capacity from document to document.
Western leaders have repeatedly said that President Vladimir Putin will order his military to go further and attack NATO countries in Central and Eastern Europe if he is not stopped in Ukraine. Meanwhile, Russian President Vladimir Putin met with the Moscow-installed governor of the Zaporizhzhia region in the Kremlin. During the meeting, Putin told the governor that the main focus in Zaporizhzhia was security of the nuclear power plant. Putin accused Ukraine of conducting strikes against the nuclear plant. He adds that a lack of attention to this from the forces that support Ukraine is a big mistake on their part.
The key factor is the maintaining of security of the entire region and people. We will do this. We will manage it without a doubt. I see the things that need to be addressed that are connected to the security. First of all, this is the security of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. The fact that the enemy is conducting direct strikes on the plant requires special attention from our side, and unfortunately does not draw attention from those forces that support the Kyiv regime today. This is their big mistake. And we will remember this and talk about this many times.
The attack took place earlier this month when, according to Russian officials, a Ukrainian drone attack injured 8 workers from the Russian-controlled Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant and left a nearby town largely without power and water. Earlier, UN General Assembly adopted a resolution that demanded that Russia immediately cease its aggression against Ukraine and urgently withdraw its military and other unauthorized personnel from the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. The 193-member UN General Assembly adopted the resolution with 99 votes in favor, 9 against, and 60 abstentions, including India, Bangladesh, Bhutan, China, Egypt, Nepal, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, South Africa, and Sri Lanka. Those voting against the resolution included Belarus, Cuba, North Korea, Russia, and Syria. Meanwhile, the Pentagon said that U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin and Russian Defense Minister Andrei Borisov spoke for a second time in just over 2 weeks amid tensions over the war in Ukraine.
Separately, this morning, Secretary Austin also spoke by phone with Russian Minister of Defense Andrei Borisov. During the call, the secretary emphasized the importance of maintaining lines of communication amid Russia's ongoing war against Ukraine. The last time Secretary Austin spoke with his Russian counterpart was on June 25, 2024, and later today a brief readout of the call will be posted to defense.gov.
The Russian Defense Ministry said that the two held a telephonic call where they discussed lowering the risk of possible escalation. The call, which was initiated by Moscow, comes as tensions between the two sides flare over Washington's plan to deploy long-range missiles in Germany, a decision the Kremlin warned could spell a return to Cold War-style confrontation. On the battleground, Russia said that its forces have taken control of a settlement in Ukraine, while the Ukrainian side said its forces have engaged in 62 battles with Russian troops. The Russian Defense Ministry said in its reports that its forces took control of the settlement of Voskod in the Donetsk region in eastern Ukraine. Elections in Pakistan may have ended months ago, but the twists and turns in the poll mandate continues. In the latest, the Supreme Court has ruled in favor of jailed ex-Prime Minister Imran Khan's party. The top court ruled that the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, or PTI, is eligible for 23 more seats in the National Assembly. These are 23 extra reserve seats in addition to the representation that the party already has in the parliament. The move comes as a big win for the PTI and the party founder Imran Khan. But why were the PTI leaders deprived of the seats in the first place? During the February 8th elections, candidates from Khan's party had contested as independents after the PTI was barred from polls. As per the result, the leaders won the most number of seats. However, the Pakistan Election Commission said that independent candidates were ineligible for the grant of 70 reserved seats that were meant for political parties alone. To the party's dismay, the poll body had then ordered the reserved seats to be distributed among other parties instead. But the latest court ruling reversed it and gave 23 seats back to the PTI leaders. In terms of where the parliamentary representation now stands, this does not impact the parliamentary majority of the ruling PMLN led by Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif. The ruling coalition still has well over 200 members of the 336-member lower house of parliament. However, the development now takes total up for Khan's PTI to over 100 seats in the National Assembly, further strengthening the party's presence in the parliament. The decades-long petrodollar agreement between the U.S. and Saudi Arabia has come to an end. This major shift could reshape the global oil market and challenge the U.S. dollar's dominance. The next report explores the details, what it means for the future of international trade, and the rising trend of de-dollarization. Take a look. In a move shaking the global financial landscape, Saudi Arabia has ended its historic agreement with the United States to exclusively sell oil in U.S. dollars. This petrodollar deal, established in 1974, has been a cornerstone of American economic power. Now, Saudi Arabia is free to sell oil in various currencies, potentially weakening the dollar's dominance in international trade. This shift coincides with the growing influence of the BRICS group, which includes major economies like China, India, and now Saudi Arabia itself. BRICS nations are pushing for greater use of local currencies in international transactions, further challenging the dollar's traditional role. The recent wave of geopolitical tensions, particularly the war in Ukraine and sanctions on Russia, has fueled concerns about the security of dollar-denominated assets. Central banks responsible for managing a nation's foreign reserves are increasingly worried about the potential weaponization of these reserves, meaning their seizure or freezing in case of conflict. This has led to a diversification of central bank reserves, with currencies like the euro and yen gaining traction. Additionally, gold is seeing renewed interest as a safe haven asset. Data suggests a potential de-dollarization trend. While the US dollar still holds a dominant position in global reserves of around 55%, its share has been steadily declining from 67% in 2021. Central banks are actively diversifying their holdings towards their currencies and gold. This shift, driven by both economic and political factors, could have significant long-term consequences for global financial markets and the US dollar's position as the world's reserve currency. Business Bureau, WION World is One.